My name is Dan Dixon, and I am from Carrollton, Georgia. When I think about the person I am now and thinking about my life and my upbringing and kind of the people that were a part of my life, so from Carrollton, Georgia, and I have a really great family, brought up in Sunday school in very Southern Baptist church. Mom, dad, still married, two older sisters. And we met for Sunday lunch every Sunday at my grandmother's house with our big family. We all live within about 2 to 3 miles of each other. Stayed in touch. I mean, I have a really big cousin group growing up with them. And so growing up, my parents were very influential in me, and my grandmother, her name's Mama June, probably one of the biggest influences that I've got in my entire life. She's the sweetest, most giving, servient, older person I think of any people I've ever met. And so I grew up, like I said, good family, big family, in school, in church. But for me, the way my life started to shift later, so I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I was sexually abused by an older female close to the family. It really shaped and shifted everything about me at about the age of 8. And it really, I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, because all of a sudden, like, I'm this damaged person at such a young age, but I still have to go to church. I still have to go to school. I have to put on this face that everything's okay when everything wasn't. Getting into middle school and places like that, I was already a big kid, so it was already very easy to make fun of me for my size. Then you're adding this stuff into it as well, with the abuse, and it was like I was learning to be a different person with different groups of people. Like, I knew how to act right at church. When I'd get around another group at school, I knew how to throw out the cuss words and the dirty jokes. When I'd get around this group that was around my family, I knew how to make sure to say all the right words so that no one knew how bad things kind of were on the inside. I got really, really good at making sure those groups stayed completely apart from each other. So I began using drugs right 13, going on 14, right there. And I guess it was right around the age of 14. And I had to have something to hide all the pain. Like, I was really, really struggling on the inside to mask it, because it kept wanting to come out and like tell somebody, but I knew I couldn't, and I felt like I would be such this terrible person if I told people. So smoking pot and drinking really kept it at bay. So in high school, I began to experience more and more the older I got. And really, before I'm graduating high school, like, I'm on coke, ecstasy, and numerous other things. That's just to say a few. But I'm also graduating my class with Homecoming King and Mr. Central High School, and thinking all these things are the accolades that I need to like lay a foundation for my life. And then I got to college and realized they didn't mean squat. So I get into college and I flunk out first semester because all I want to do is party. I want to join fraternities. I want to do these things, but like, people are like, hey, he's got real problems. We don't think it'd be a good fit. I go to college again. I flunk out a second time within the first semester, and I got permanently dismissed from the second college. I was told, you're never allowed back in this college, which was pretty devastating. So I went to one other college. My parents were trying to give me one more chance, and I flunked out the first semester again. So I had a friend. We began working construction together, traveling the country. So at 21, I'm traveling during this time all over the United States, working on windmills, the gigantic windmills that are geared for making power. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just working to make money. I didn't really care. And then I got hurt on the job. And I remember that day, everyone always thinks the bigger you are, the more you can lift. And I was always willing to do it and work my best, but I pulled something in my back and I had no insurance. So I knew going to the hospital was completely out. I was in South Dakota and I didn't know what to do. So I had a friend who said, hey, this is a Percocet 10. It will really help with your process. Like, it'll really make your back feel better. You'll be able to go to work tomorrow, because if we miss work, we might get fired. And so he gives me a Perc 10 and I'm like, wow, that feels amazing. Next thing I know, he's like, hey, we're selling some of these, and here's some Percocet 30s, which are the 30 milligram ones. And I was like, okay, well, if the 10 felt good, the 30 must feel 3 times better. So I do that, and within about 6 months, I was a full-blown opiate addict. Bank account completely drained, losing friends, stealing from people, getting fired from my job. I go work a second job in Carrollton, Georgia. I have a friend who hired me, and I get fired from that job because I'm choosing to leave work to go get high because I can't think of anything else to do. Like, all I want to do is get high on opiates at this point. And so I'm fired there. I go to my first detox, and I tell my parents this will be like rehab. I'll do a week. It was miserable. I hated every minute of it. And I get out and I relapse probably within the first 6 hours that I can get home. And I keep going a little bit. I go back to detox again. I started to play this cycle with my family, but they don't really know what's going on. Like, they're not really, I'm not letting them in. I don't want them to see all the pain. I don't want them to see all the mess. And I keep them at bay enough so that they don't know how bad things are getting. Like, I'm overdrafting on a weekly basis. Like, I'm doing anything. I'm starting to steal. I'm starting to pawn. I forged a few checks during this time just to be able to get by. And so I eventually get to the point where I go to my aunt's house. I'm fiending so bad to get high that I break into her house to steal a jar of change that had about $15 in it, because I didn't care. I mean, I was willing to do whatever. And well, they found out about it. They knew instantly who it was. They didn't even have to think twice. And they show up and they say, look, we're going to kind of give you the option. We're either really going to press this down, like you may look at some jail, or you can go get help. Like, we don't want to put you in jail. Like, that's the last thing we want to do. But if you don't go get long-term help, we're going to start pushing for this because you broke into our house. And so I'm like, okay. And my brother-in-law, who lived by the Mall of Georgia at the time, said, hey, there's this place called No Longer Bound. This was in 2011. And he said that they're faith-based. I think it'd be good for him. So I go, I stay, I fight it all the way there. I'm mad, I'm angry. All I want to do is go get high. And I stay 4 days and I leave. And I was like, nope, don't want to do this. And so I leave. At the time, they didn't call your family or anybody. And there I was, a 20-something-year-old man walking in an area that he had no clue where he was going, just trying to go get high. And I remember I made it about a mile or so up to a Waffle House. I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm going to get on an airplane and you're never going to see me again. I don't know where I'm going to go. Y'all did this to me. This is y'all's fault. And at the time, I'm calling my drug dealer to get him to drive the hour-plus trip up to pick me up so I can get back to Carrollton and use. My sister, who lived in the area, roughly about that area, she knew I couldn't afford a plane ticket because I had no money. So they go out and they start looking for me and my brother-in-law when they were living by the Mall of Georgia. And my drug dealer makes it up. He picks me up. We start driving. And his car shot transmission fluid in the car, or some fluid in the car. And we're pulled over on the side of the road trying to get on, I think it was 285. And we're sitting there and I'm like, wow, I'm calling other friends, like, please come get me. Please, I need to get home, making empty promises to people. And as soon as I'm sitting there, a car pulls up. And I'm thinking, wow, this is great. Like, someone's going to give me a tow. And it was my sister and my brother-in-law. Of all people that it could have been, it was them. And they talked me into getting in their car. They locked the doors and they pulled off. And they said, we're going to get you some help because you need help. I ended up going back to No Longer Bound for 6 months and was asked to leave because I kept breaking I was offered to restart their program or leave due to my breaking the rules. I couldn't quit breaking the rules. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do the whole time. So I go home, I manipulate my parents once again into letting me come home. And in that year of time, year and a half of time, begins probably the darkest time that I can remember. I get a job and I'm see my drug dealer out in the streets, And I'm like, where's the closest ATM? This is after being sober for almost 7 months by this point. And and then I begin running out of money again. And I have another friend who says, hey, those painkillers are getting really expensive. You should go do heroin with me. I got a place in Atlanta that I go to up in the Bluffs. And I was like, all right, well, it's cheaper. And if it'll work, it'll work. So we start traveling back and forth on and off for months at a time. And that's when I began my heroin usage up in Atlanta. I get back in it. My parents at this time finally say enough's enough. Like, you can't keep staying here and keep stealing from us. I'm stealing checks. I'm anything I can pawn, I'm pawning at this time. It didn't matter. As long as I could get money for it, I was gonna sell it. To kind of fast forward, like I get to the point where I overdose. So I had an overdose in a church parking lot in the middle of it, somewhere in Midtown Atlanta. And I shoot up because I'm using intravenously at this point, and I slump out over my steering wheel and my horn goes off. To this day, I will still never be able to repay them enough because I don't even know who they are. Some group is going through doing Narcan ministry. All they do is go through and walk through these areas of Atlanta with Narcan to help bring people back to life. And they hear the car horn and they come and they get me back alive. I come awake, they're like, you need to go to the hospital. I'm like, no, I have to get home. Like, I'm giving every excuse I can. And I keep using after that. I still can't stop. Like, all I can think is like, numb all the pain, stay away from everybody, keep myself feeling good long enough until either I die or I somehow end up in prison for something I did. I didn't care. Like, I was to the point, like, death seemed better than being alive. I go to sleep one night and I wake up and I just remember, like, it was that brief moment of clarity where I was like, this is the worst situation I can imagine. First, I wouldn't wish this on like my worst enemy. Just thinking, I'm living in a car that has hardly any gas. My phone's in the pawn shop because I pawned it for money. I'm out begging people to give me money, and I'm eating in and out of dumpsters or trying to find food that I can just eat. And I called my mom from a payphone that I found around the area, and I said, Mom, like, I need to come home and I want you to ask and see. Like, I'm crying on the phone with my mom, like, will you just see if No Longer Bound would take me back one more time? Because I really want something different. And I go back, you have to write a letter. I write the letter and they're like, if you can be here in 2 days, we'll take you in. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I went in, I was still teetering, like, is this gonna work? I wanted to leave after being there for a week because I was still withdrawing. But I had a great friend, Greg Yost, who's one of my big time mentors, and Dusty Labossiere. Man, they really poured into me not to leave. And I stayed. And it was through that time, like in the first 10 months, it was a 10-month program back then. And I make it to Inner Healing. And I remember the moment of like physically sitting down, letting it out that I had been sexually abused, that I had been teased, that I couldn't stand myself, that I couldn't, that I wanted a relationship with my family, but I didn't know how, and just bawling it out and letting it all out and saying, like, I have to have something different because what I've done, I've just been a dead person who's been walking around. Thank God he showed up, because God stepped into that situation, and it was like watching him just pull a sack of trash off of me that was killing me. And I've never felt as light as I've ever felt. And I met him, man. Like, I met who God really is. And that was just a perfect father that I needed. And it changed everything. Like, I didn't even think, I never stopped and thought again, like, I want to go back to what I was doing. It was so crazy that I thought, this is the lifestyle for me. Until I met God and he showed me how worthy I am of the new life that I'm capable of living. So I stay there at No Longer Bound. I graduate and I end up staying for the internship that they offer, which is an additional 10 months. And get called to ministry of all things. Not only that, I get called to youth ministry at that time in my life. And God he just continues to show how spoiled I really am for him, how spoiled he really treats me. When I graduated at No Longer Bound, right there at the very end, as we were doing forgiveness, they really challenged me to forgive the lady that abused me when I was a kid. And I can remember thinking, that sounds better than any part of the lifestyle that I was a part of, and I will definitely do that. And I wrote the letter to forgive the lady. I went to her house. I read the letter. It was the most beautiful moment I've seen of like standing face to face with the person that I always felt was the problem and saying, I forgive you. I hope you and your family live a great life. I hope you do great things, but I can't harbor this hatred for you anymore because it's killing me, not necessarily you anymore. And it was a beautiful moment of who God really is for me. Like, who am I to not forgive people? Who am I to really hold someone down for what they did? Like, if I can be forgiven for my just absolute epitome of the stuff that I did, then who am I to put that on somebody? So it was really beautiful and it was awesome, and it really continued to change and show that like God's got this. The more I kept doing the hard stuff, the more he kept showing up in bigger ways. And so I leave, I get married, or I meet my wife at a Starbucks when I was working at Starbucks of all places. We get married roughly about a year and a half, maybe 2 years into our relationship. Have our daughter. I get called to full-time youth ministry in South Georgia, in the middle of Ludowici, Georgia. So my tattoos and why I got them and why they kind of really play into my story. So my first tattoo, I have one on my back from my addiction, but one's for what I got for my recovery and like moving forward. So I got this first one here. This is Cross Equals Love. I actually saw this. Hillsong had a big banner one time, and I remember seeing it. But when I looked at it, I wanted to make it more personalized. So Cross Equals Love, but inside I put a heartbeat, because for me, one of the heaviest things that I remember is my overdose and coming back to life, and the heartbeat, how amazing it is that I'm even still here, that my heart is even still beating. And the only reason that's possible is because of what Christ did. And I can't deny it. Like it's not just some magic force that made this happen, man. It's been God all along. And so for me, what Christ did on the cross, man, it was nothing but love for me. Why I got it there was really when I was working at Starbucks. I really wanted to share my faith more. I wanted to get more open about sharing my faith to people. And I wanted to get it in a place to where when I was giving someone their coffee or I was giving someone their change, I would hand out the change, and the first thing they would see was my tattoo, and they would ask questions about it. And it really led to a lot of beautiful conversations that took place. I would say, hey, here's your coffee, here's your change. And the first thing they'd say is like, wow, what's that stand for? And it always led to a really good conversation, because I wanted to be able to share my faith with people openly. My second tattoo, I got a little bit up. This was one as I was in my recovery and beginning in it. So Reggie Dabbs, who's a preacher, I'm not even sure where he preaches now. I know he travels everywhere, but I got to see him at Forward Conference when we were taking some of our residents there at the time. And he had a big thing, and it was like a chant, and you could just feel the Holy Spirit moving in that place. And he would just be like, somebody say it with me, just long live the King. And he would just like really like beat it in, and the way he said it, like you could just feel so heavily. And it was all about long live King Jesus, and you just felt it. And I remember thinking, like, that's a chant like I would live by, like long live King Jesus and what he's done, like, and me being a part of being able to share that across the world and being able to tell that to people, man, how great Jesus is. And so I just got there because I want to be able to have a reminder every day to just remember like how great and how awesome he is. Man, long live King Jesus. If I could give anybody advice, and I mean, just from myself and my past, I had somebody tell me once that when he's looked at me. I was talking about my struggles with my weight and my struggles with my life. And I had a friend say, when are you going to stop allowing imperfect people to perfect you? And I remember thinking like, wow, that hits right to my core, because I built so much of my life being defined by what other people said and thought about me, and what magazines I grew up before social media, was really a big thing, but I based who I was off everybody else. I wanted to be perfect because everybody else wanted me to be a particular way. So if I could give the challenge to anybody, be you. Be who God called you to be, and understand that like you're loved, and there are good people out there. I thought forever that everyone was bad and everyone hated me and everyone was the problem. There are some really, really awesome people out there that want to care for you, love for you, and show you love. And it's powerful to know that you are you, because that's who you're supposed to be. And I think that really helped me, and I hope it really helps somebody else out there too.